Okay, which feels cheaper to you? $3 or $2.99?
Yeah.
Mathematically, I mean, the difference is 1 cent. But psychologically, it really isn't.
Not even close.
And when something is advertised as free, our analytical thinking just seems to switch off. It leaves us open to making much more expensive decisions down the line.
Completely.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into a stack of research on pricing psychology. We're going to unpack the mechanisms that make $2.99 feel miles away from $3.
And why those big price anchors steer our judgment so much.
Exactly, and the dreaded hidden fees drip pricing that trap us at checkout. Our mission for you is to walk away from this recognizing these patterns instantly. The goal is to make clearer, more rational choices next time.
Welcome to the deep dive.
So here's the roadmap for this deep dive. First, we're going to tackle the peculiar, almost magical power of zero, the free price effect.
Then we'll look at the .99 endings, the left digit bias and why it's so persistent.
After that, we'll connect those small biases to the big ones, looking at how initial numbers or anchors shape our expectations, especially during a sale.
And finally, we'll break down the incredibly frustrating modern problem of mandatory hidden fees.
Let's jump straight in with zero. When a product or service drops to free, consumer demand it skyrockets in a way that simple math can't explain. Making something a little cheaper is a nudge.
But making it free, that completely reshapes behavior.
So why does free have this disproportionate power over us?
Well, it's often driven by two forces. First, there's the extra perceived benefit. Free doesn't just remove a cost. It feels like a small win, a bonus.
That feeling of, I can't lose if it's free.
Exactly. But maybe more importantly, the visible risk just vanishes. With no immediate downside, we stop weighing trade-offs. We move faster. Our brain loves a simple story. And free equals safe is about as simple as it gets.
That psychological safety, though, that can lead to actual risk, can't it? Especially when free is applied to digital services. You might not be paying money, but you're often paying with something else.
You're paying with your data, or your attention, or your time. And what's fascinating here is that regulators have really started to recognize this problem.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So even if a digital service has a zero monetary price, it is still subject to legal protection.
Yeah.
To consumer law. Because if you're transacting with your data, a transaction is happening.
So if free is this psychological loophole, what have regulators actually done to try and close it?
They've really focused on how things like free trials or automatic signups leverage our tendency to just stick with the path of least resistance. It's called the default and status quo effect.
Right, we just go with the flow.
We do. We have a very strong tendency to just stick with the default option even if we regret it later. And that physical act of signing up sort of nudges you into that choice.
And the clearest example of that has to be the notorious pre-ticked box, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Regulators identified that pre-ticked boxes online led a significant proportion of consumers to suffer detriment.
What kind of detriment?
Everything from being billed for services you never wanted to unwittingly sharing personal data you never meant to. The evidence of that specific harm was so compelling.
So they acted on it.
They did. The use of pre-ticked boxes online was banned under the Consumer Rights Directive. It was a direct response to that psychological trap, the one that leverages our laziness and our assumption that the default is okay.
That's a great example of regulation actually catching up to behavioral science. So if zero bends our risk radar, let's talk about how 9 ending prices bend our number perception.
The classic $2.99.
We all know it's just 1 cent shy of $3, but it feels like it belongs in the $2 bracket. We know better, but the feeling persists. Why does that 1 single cent matter so much?
It boils down to the left digit bias. As literate people, we process numbers from left to right.
Right, automatically.
And when we're scanning quickly, that first digit anchors our entire perception of the number. Before our brain has even fully registered the .99, it has already filed the price under the $2 category, not $3.
It's a trick that relies on speed.
Exactly, the speed of our visual processing.
But are these .99 endings still genuinely effective? I mean, we're all pretty savvy consumers now, haven't we adapted?
You'd think so, but the observational data confirms this bias is still substantial and very persistent. There were large-scale studies on Lyft, the ride-sharing platform, and they found that their demand curves had, and I'm quoting here, large and important discontinuities at round dollar values.
Meaning people are just less likely to book a ride for exactly $10.
Far less likely than one priced at $9.99, even when the rides are identical in every other way.
Can you give us a sense of the scale of this? Is it a small statistical flicker or a real financial driver?
Oh, it's a significant driver. Economists have studied this with huge data sets. Scanner data, used car odometer values.
Used cars, how does that work?
Well, they found that cars with, say, 69,800 miles, so just under a big threshold, sold for hundreds of dollars more than cars just over that threshold.
Wow.
That sharp drop-off in perceived value allowed them to actually estimate the inattention parameter. So how much we ignore the digits on the right. It's somewhere between 0.15 and 0.30.
So this isn't just a quaint retail thing. It's a measurable, large-scale behavior that companies are relying on to substantially increase profits.
Exactly. And they do it just by playing on that left digit bias.
Right.
The only real context where it might backfire is maybe in luxury markets.
Where it might look cheap.
Precisely. In premium segments, a round price can signal confidence or quality, not a sales pitch.
Okay, so if the left-digit bias is a small anchor, let's talk about the big anchors. Reference prices. Just to redefine it for everyone, anchoring is the idea that the first number we see pulls all our later judgments toward it.
Because we judge value by comparison, not in a vacuum, not by absolute cost.
This is the entire basis of a sales tag, isn't it?
It is. The seller is essentially trying to teach you what something should cost. They'll use a cross-out original price, or the MSRP, or maybe a really premium option right next to the affordable one.
Just to make the one they want you to buy look like a great deal.
It's all about framing.
What's so frustrating as a consumer, though, is realizing that those original prices often feel, well, they feel fake. Oh, was the product ever actually sold at that price?
You've hit on the exact abuse that regulators have been trying to curb. So many promotions relied on these fake reference prices that had no bearing on the product's actual sales history.
They were just creating phantom savings out of phantom prices.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So how did the law respond? Did they just force businesses to be honest about the list price?
That's essentially the goal of the new rules under the EU's Modernization Directive.
Okay.
So now, when a seller advertises a price reduction, they have to disclose the lowest price applied to that product during the 30 days prior to the sale.
Now that is the key piece of information for the listener. It forces transparency by shifting the anchor from some made-up MSRP to the verifiable recent price history.
The anchor has to be tied to reality now. It stops sellers from, jacking up the price for a day just so they can drop it and claim a massive sale.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our final and maybe the most insidious psychological trap, drip pricing.
Ugh, yes.
This is where you see a base price first, and then mandatory surcharges are added later, often one by one as you click through checkout.
Drip pricing causes harm in two ways, really. Financially, of course, the final purchase is way more expensive than you thought.
And cognitively.
It just massively increases your search costs.
Yeah.
You have to spend so much time and effort comparing different sites, only to find the true price on the very last screen.
And the psychology of actually committing to that final price is brutal, isn't it? After you've spent 10 minutes filling out forms.
You're trapped. You're trapped by loss aversion and the sunk cost fallacy.
Right, sunk cost.
Yeah.
You've already invested time and effort.
Exactly. And your brain is incredibly reluctant to just abandon the whole thing and go back to square one, even when the final price is revealed to be much higher. You feel committed.
We see this everywhere. Event tickets are a classic example. That $55 base ticket suddenly gets, what, $9.60 in per item fees?
Service charge, facility charge.
And then another $2.95 in order processing fees. You start at $55 and end up over $67. All mandatory, but all added drip by drip.
Or ordering takeaway food. A subtotal of, say, £7.17 can easily become £10.44 because of a small order fee, a service fee, and a delivery fee.
When the fees are approaching half the price of the food itself.
The confusion is the point.
And airlines are maybe the masters of this, especially with seating. The seat selection fee is often labeled optional, but it becomes mandatory in practice if you're traveling with a child.
Of course. You can't take the risk you won't be seated together. That optional fee is not optional at all.
So what are regulators doing about this? It seems so widespread.
They're struggling with it. While bodies like the ACCC in Australia have successfully penalized airlines for this in the past, the practice just persists globally.
So what's the solution?
There's a really strong push from consumer groups for an explicit legal ban, one that requires the disclosure of all mandatory fees up front. The price you see on the first page should be the price you pay, period.
This has been a really powerful deep dive. We've talked about the power of zero, the illusion of the left digit bias, the gravity of anchors, and the trap of drip pricing.
It's a lot to keep in mind.
It is. So before you go and make your next purchase, here's a quick, actionable checklist based on everything we've covered. First, when you see free, immediately check the fine print.
Look for automatic signups, pre-check boxes. Ask yourself, what am I really paying with here?
Second, when you see a price ending in 0.99, consciously override that left digit bias. Look at the digit on the right and just mentally round up. See, $2.99 is $3, not $2.
Third, if a price is advertised as a discount, remember the new rules. Look for the actual lowest price from the last month, not some inflated original price. You have to challenge the anchor.
And finally, fourth, before committing, especially online for tickets or travel, check the final total on the first screen you can. If all the mandatory fees aren't there, just abandon the cart. Find a competitor who's more transparent.
If we pull back and connect all of this to the bigger picture, it raises a really interesting question about information itself.
How so?
What's fascinating is that complexity can be a business strategy. Some businesses may purposefully increase complexity with complicated fees or layered pricing or just long contracts.
Because they know we'll just give up trying to understand it.
Exactly. When we're faced with information overload, we deal with it by simplifying our decision, or we just ignore the complexity entirely. And that simplification, that neglect, is precisely what hides the true cost of the product.
So the next time you find a pricing structure confusing,
stop and ask yourself if that confusion is an accident or if it's part of the design. Consider what role that complexity might be playing in your own decision-making process.